Today I'm showing you how to scale, gut, clean and fillet a fish. We've got sea bass.
You can apply this technique to any fish that looks the same shape. So it's called a round fish because if you cut it this way, it's sort of round.
I'm going to start by removing the fins. In Japan, the fish always comes with
The head on the left, the tail on the right. We're going to take the scales off. You can use a scaler. I find that the scales go everywhere, so
if you do use a scaler, you do it in an up and down technique rather than a cross technique, and this saves the flesh from being super damaged. However, I'm going to cut them off. The name of this technique is called sukibiki, which is to cut the scales
from the fish. The purpose of the technique is to
not damage the flesh so much,
and it's also a lot easier to clean.
For this technique, I actually use a long knife.
I think it just helps to have the extra length just in case you need it. And I do prefer using a single-sided knife rather than a double-sided knife for it.
I always suggest to use a towel when you
do this as well, just in case you slip, so that you hit the towel rather than your fingers.
Okay, now I've got the majority of the scales off the fish. Bring it back to center. And then, because of the areas that we're going to cut, when we fillet it, I'm just gonna
run the scaler just over those parts.
Just in case. Okay.
So, scaled fish.
Nice clean board.
So after scaling the fish with something that's quite thin
and long, taking a thick knife, we've got German made knife. They've generally got a really thick back.
And a really thick heel,
which is perfect for going through bones.
I take the tail off.
However, it's not completely necessary. And then in Japan there's a technique called ikejime.
Probably better known as ikejime, but that's actually a different technique.
They're both relative, and it's
to take the blood out of the fish. So you can see that the fish is bleeding from the tail now.
If we are to keep the fish
for a long time, we want to take as much of that blood out as
possible. We've taken the tail off. Now we're going to go through the hole to open up the belly. I'm doing this on an awkward angle for a camera. I would usually do it like this. Cut up through where the belly fins were, and then we're going to go through the flesh.
And then break the spine.
With sea bass, careful because there's quite a sharp edge here. So use a towel on the knife.
And break through the spine.
And then we just cut the flesh on the other side.
Now remove all the guts.
So being very gentle with the belly.
We're going to open up the bladder and then go back down to remove all the blood from
next to the spine bone.
Make sure that you open up all of it. This is so that we can access all of the blood in the spine.
Then we're going to go over the sink.
So being as gentle as you can with the belly, I'm going to open it up just because it's on video, but I wouldn't usually open it up this much. The belly bones will start to break through this way. And with a toothbrush is actually, I find, the best thing to use for this. Traditionally in Japan, you would use like a wooden brush. I'm gonna remove as much of the fat along the belly as well. Just makes it a bit easier to access. And the reason why we're removing the blood from the top of the belly here is if you store it together, it will make the meat go a little bit bitter and it won't last as long. Even if I was filleting it now, I would take this out because the bitterness will affect, or the irony flavor will affect the flavor of the meat, and we want a clean flavor for fish.
The blood, it's all clean inside the cavity here.
And then we want to make sure that we're working with a dry fish.
So to store the fish for later use or to age the fish, which will bring more umami, I have bamboo fiber cloth.
In Japan there's something similar that's a little bit thinner, and I find that they're really good for keeping fish. However, it is quite expensive. So you can use kitchen towel, but make sure it's non-colored kitchen towel. I've stuffed one towel inside the belly, and this is to keep the moisture consistent and as fairly dry. And then I've put the two towels below it in a diamond shape, fish on somewhere near the bottom, and take the side near the tail across and the bottom ones up. Go roll the fish over.
And then take the
head side, and then that's how I keep the fish. In the fridge,
it's best to keep it
not tightly covered. So in a container that's doesn't seal properly. And that will mean that there's some air circulation, which means that the fish won't go bad, and it means that the fish won't dry out too much.
Now to fillet the fish, I'm going to take the fish with the head on the
Right-hand side.
I'm working in a very compromised space, but you usually want to give yourself enough room
to not let the knife go into you. Start by going into the end of the belly cavity, and we're just going to open up the skin.
and then
In the belly cavity, angle the knife slightly down, but on the top side, and go into the end of the spine, or the spine. And then keeping that angle, you're going to open up just along the on top of the bones, and then on top of the spine. So we've opened up the flesh, the skin, and opened up the flesh, and then got on top of the spine, which will give us
the maximum yield of meat. Turn the fish around.
So we're going to do the same process on the back side by opening up the skin again. Make sure that's opened up, and then we're going to go on top of the spine, just with the tip of the knife.
Then take a thick knife again,
Pinch the fillets up.
gently,
This is breaking the fillet.
away from the bones. So breaking through the pin bones. Just be very strong, very direct.
And we should have a pretty nice fillet.
So same technique on the other opposite side of the fish.
Opening up the skin. The best way is to push the fish into the board a little bit, very gently, and then on top of to the spine.
So on top of the spine with the tip of the knife, then
On the other side, again, the fish slightly into the board, skin into the bone, on top of the bone. Now we have two nice fillets of fish that we've got almost all of the meat still on the fillets. We're going to change the angle so that we can take the belly bones off. First one, we're just going to take the tip of the knife and break through the pin bones.
you've cut through the pin bone and belly bone joint.
And then you just want to follow into your hand as much as possible to, again, maximize yield, to remove the belly bones.
Make a nice neat cut.
And I'm also just going to neaten up the belly here. So on the other side of the fish, we're going to just slice through the belly and pin bone joint.
Nice neat cut. And we have
Two lovely fillets. So now we've got the pin bones facing from right to left. If you're right-handed, obviously opposite if you're not. You're going to start by making sure that the very last pin bone is taken out. Once you have a grip of your pin bone, pinch the fish, or pinch the top of the pin bone so that the flesh doesn't get damaged. Sea bass doesn't have a lot of pin bones, so I think we had 5. So again, lift the fish up so that you can take the first one out. Then we're going to
pinch the fish again. 1,
2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm just using my finger to feel if there's any left in, and I cut through the belly bones, so the 4th and 5th that I took out were actually belly bones rather than pin bones.
Now we have 2 nice fillets of fish. So I'm going to take the skin off this one. I think that the best way to do this is to cut the fillet in half lengthways. However, you can take the skin off like this. And to take the skin off,
You start by taking the meat on the tail, very end of the tail, off, so you have access to between the flesh and the skin. And then to take the skin off,
what you're going to do is
slide your knife between the skin and the flesh, and then once you have enough skin to grab, you can use the skin against the knife rather than the knife against the skin. And then you're trying to keep this silver skin on the fish. That's where a lot of the
flavor is.
I'm going to cut the fish
In half.
lengthways now that I've showed you how to do.
The technique.
If you wanted to keep it together, you could absolutely just keep pulling the skin away from the fish. It works best if you use a cloth because you have more grip.
Slide a knife.
Back in. 1 sea bass skinned.